The San Francisco 49ers have been busy, and maybe Kyle on Zoom calls in Cabo, I'm not sure, but there have been 3 official interviews for the San Francisco 49ers for their vacant defensive coordinator spot now that Robert Saleh has moved on to the Tennessee Titans as head coach. We'll break down the 3 candidates, and might there be one more big fish in the pool on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock, at Coach Crocky. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen of the day, and thanks for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. We appreciate you. Make sure you're subscribed up on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. And today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. If you're new to FanDuel as a customer, all you got to do is bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. All right, Croc, got some news, got some juicy nuggets about the San Francisco 49ers now, and had a feeling there had been some interviews happening, and now we do know that at least 3 men have been interviewed to be the next defensive coordinator of the San Francisco 49ers. One of those names we already knew in-house. Gus Bradley had been with the San Francisco 49ers this year. At the season-ending press conference, Kyle Shanahan said that he was the only internal candidate and that they felt really good about Gus Bradley. So Gus Bradley is one of those candidates. He has officially interviewed now for the job, according to Matt Mayoko. But 2 more interesting names, Croc. One is one that we hoped and assumed that would be at least part of this process after being fired as head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, and he had some head coach interviews to do first. But the 49ers have interviewed Raheem Morris, Kyle's old buddy from their time back in Tampa Bay, and he's been a defense coordinator numerous places. He's been a head coach a couple times as well. And then another familiar name that I didn't really have on the radar is Joe Woods, who was with the San Francisco 49ers for a time as a defensive backs coach and has spent some time in various spots as a defensive coordinator in the NFL. So Raheem Morris, Joe Woods, and Gus Bradley officially have interviewed for the job with Kyle Shanahan, and potentially one of those 3 guys will be the 49ers' next defensive coordinator, Croc.
Yeah, so Joe Woods, just in case you guys don't remember, he did spend time with the 49ers. 2019, defensive back and passing game coordinator. And I remember when he came, he was supposed to help and bring a certain element to the defensive backfield. And 2019, if you guys don't remember, that one of the best defenses the 49ers have had in recent memory. So obviously terrific up front. That makes things easier on the back end guys, but that landed him defensive coordinating job for 3 years with the Cleveland Browns, another 2 years with the New Orleans Saints. Obviously, the Saints changed regimes. He went to the Las Vegas Raiders, and obviously they fired their coach where he was the passing game coordinator. So this is a guy that's been around and clearly, truly understands defense and has done a lot of really good stuff. So shout out to Joe Woods getting the opportunity. But you know me, I am team Raheem Morris. I just feel like the vibes that Kyle Shanahan is trying to bring to the defense and that side of the ball, I think he brings that, right? Like just kind of like that energy. Remember, the 49ers tried kind of that Wilkes up in the booth, kind of older guy. And that's not to say that doesn't work, but the 49ers players just didn't respond very well to it. They were like, nah, we kind of need that fiery guy on the sideline. Like, no, we need Robert Saleh, like that type of guy, or D'Amico Ryans, like that type of guy. And not saying Gus Bradley can't be. I don't know if that's just naturally his personality. So hopefully it's a guy like Raheem Morris. And I don't think he's a super rah-rah guy, but he's definitely going to bring the energy.
I think 3 very good candidates. I think these are 3 better candidates than the 49ers had in Steve Wilkes, who was kind of forced in. And by the way, Steve Wilkes had never called a lot of plays in general as a defensive coach before he got that job as defense coordinator for the 49ers, and was kind of forced into running a different scheme as well than maybe his own scheme that he fully believed in. and famously was talking about how he was still learning the scheme when he was calling plays for the 49ers defense. It's like, this is not ideal the way to do it. Nick Sorensen was just not ready to be the defensive coordinator. They tried to promote from within. That didn't work out. And so I think Joe Woods, Raheem Morris, and Gus Bradley are all better candidates than the 49ers had those couple of passes. But Joe Woods. So let's just talk about Joe Woods, 55 years old. We mentioned 2019. He was with the San Francisco 49ers as defensive backs coach and passing game coordinator. Then he was actually defensive coordinator with the Denver Broncos for 2 years before that. And for a couple of years before that, he was with Denver as defensive backs coach. He'd coached with the Raiders DBs, Vikings DBs, going all the way back to 2006. And you know what? Was Joe Woods part of that same group? Remember the story about Kyle Shanahan, and he came to the aid of Raheem Morris, and they both got arrested in Indianapolis. What year was that? Because it looks like Joe Woods was defensive quality control in 2004 and 2005 with the Bucs as well. So was also on that same staff with Kyle Shanahan and Raheem Morris, or was that a couple of years after?
Let's see. Hold on. Kyle Shanahan. Boom. He was coaching Tampa Bay. Offensive quality control coach, 2004, 2005.
There you go.
The exact same years as Joe Wood. So that's the connection. Okay, I get it now. I not to say that it just came out of nowhere. I mean, the coach, when you're coaching and you're in that community, it can get small really quick. But they actually truly coached with each other and had the same job on the opposite sides. So they probably did a lot of stuff together.
Yeah, iron sharpens iron. I don't think Joe Woods got arrested with the other two guys, though. So I love that story. It's a fantastic story. But these guys all go way back. Okay. And then after,
hold on real quick. Yeah. In the chat, Rick James Franco says Woods checks the final Rooney box, but he doesn't because they already did Raheem Morris. So they didn't need to also interview Woods.
Yes.
So you're only obligated to interview one minority, and they interviewed two. I think they really like the guys. And again, both ties back to the early days of these guys coaching.
After San Francisco in 2019, he was only with the 49ers for 1 year because then he got defensive coordinator job with the Cleveland Browns for a couple of years. And then he went to the New Orleans Saints for a couple of years as defensive coordinator. Then last year, he was with the Las Vegas Raiders as DB coach and pass game coordinator. So kind of going the other way now after a couple of years as defense coordinator. The one thing I don't like about Joe Woods is he's never had a defensive coordinator job for very long. And Raheem Morris, on the other hand, when he left a defensive coordinator job, it was because he became head coach somewhere, right? And so I think Raheem Morris does kind of clear Joe Woods just a little bit from a resume standpoint, from a candidate standpoint, even though Joe Woods would be, I think, a pretty good candidate. I think Gus Bradley, as long as Gus Bradley, like we've talked about, Gus Bradley's defenses just haven't been that good the last few years when he's been a defensive coordinator. And I think it was just too strict of the old school cover three. And it's great when, the league hasn't seen it that much and you have Earl Thomas and Richard Sherman, but when you don't, I think it's a little too stagnant. And so Gus Bradley, I would assume his candidacy would depend on him, using a different front. The 49ers, they just denied a team. I think it was the Eagles wanted to interview Chris Kosurik as defensive line coach. The 49ers denied that. So clearly they want to still run that wide nine front and want to keep Chris Kosurik around, at least for now, until until something major changes with defense coordinator. But I would hope that Gus Bradley would have learned some wrinkles and would and I assume would be trying to adopt pretty much the same game plan, same scheme that Robert Saleh had, which would be an updated version of what Gus Bradley had been running in the past. So I think he would be a good coach as well. Let's talk a little bit more, though, about Raheem Morris, what he brings, what his resume actually looks like, because I think there's a very good chance that Raheem Morris might be the next defensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers. But Jim Schwartz is still out there as well. Let's talk about the pros and cons and compare Morris and Schwartz, who are the two best candidates, in my opinion, for the job next. This episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. TurboTax full service. You can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert start to finish without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction, which is very important. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. And for a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in if a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year. Just file by February 28th. So take your taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local. That's TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. This episode is also brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff. You want to bet against the Seahawks? Yeah, you can do it on FanDuel. The final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season is officially over and comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing your favorite, riding the underdog, or building one last same game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win that $5 bet. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started.
Hey, Peacock, real quick, I did some quick just little research on Woods and his defense while he was defensive coordinator with the Cleveland Browns. He was there for 3 seasons and not too great results. All right. Yardage wise, he was kind of, he had a first season like 17th overall defensive yards given up. The next season, he was 5th overall. So that's awesome. And then the last season, he was there 13th overall. So yardage wise, nothing too terrible, but a little bit more consistencies, little peaks and valley there. Points given up. That's where he was bad. Now, you can also attribute maybe some of that to having bad offenses, which Cleveland Browns have had, and that makes it a little bit tougher to keep some points off the board if you're not moving the ball. But points-wise, and I didn't just go through, but they were bad essentially every year. So understandably so why they removed him, but get better offensively. That would have helped.
And I also wonder if Joe Woods might be a candidate if, say, Raheem Morris or anybody else gets the defensive coordinator job, a candidate to come to the 49ers in a different role, too. So I wonder if that was part of the interview where they're like, well, look, would you be willing to come and coach defensive backs and be defensive pass game coordinator? Basically the same job he just had is the same job he's had in the past, same job he had with the 49ers before, and reprise that role with the 49ers, because Dieter Kurtenbach, friend of the program, did some sleuthing. And apparently Daniel Bullocks, who was the current defensive back coach for the 49ers, been in that role for a while. He's not on the 49ers website anymore under the coaches listings. I wonder if is he headed to Tennessee with Robert Saleh maybe? Or
real quick, I just spoke and I was like, the 49ers fulfilled the Rooney Rule stuff with interviewing Morris. Yeah, it's 2 candidates now. I was not aware of that. And I just Googled it, and that is factual.
Yeah, I knew it was 2 for head coaches. I didn't know it was 2 for coordinators as well.
Yep. Head coach or coordinator.
Yeah. Okay. There you go.
Yeah, they definitely fulfilled the last one with Joe Woods.
They did. I mean, you don't want to say that that's why they interviewed him, right? These are good candidates. These are qualified candidates that should be interviewed for the job. But clearly, Raheem Morris is the guy, I think. And I think Kyle would love to hire Raheem Morris, speaks so well of Raheem Morris. Let's go through. I mean, Raheem Morris was on a rocket ship to the top, too. He actually beat Kyle to head coach, right? Kyle didn't get a head coach job until, 8 years after Raheem Morris got a head coach job. So Back when they were quality control, he moved up to assistant DBs coach with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers back in 2005. Raheem Morris did. Then he went to Kansas State as a defensive coordinator for 1 year, then immediately was hired back with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and was defensive backs coach for 2 more seasons, and then promoted from DB coach to head coach in 2009. So he was head coach of the Bucs from 2009 to 2011 at a pretty young age, and then was fired there. Went to Washington, was DB coach for a few years, then went with Kyle to the Atlanta Falcons, was assistant head coach and defensive pass game coordinator in 2015, receivers coach as well for part of his time for a couple of years there with Kyle Shanahan on that staff, and then stayed along on the Falcons staff after Kyle Shanahan left with Dan Quinn as head coach there. And then became defensive coordinator in 2020. So he was with the Falcons from 2015 to 2020, then moved over to the Los Angeles Rams as defensive coordinator from 2021 to 2023. That was right after Brandon Staley left to get a head coaching job, and then was hired last year or 2 years ago by the Atlanta Falcons, was head coach there for a couple of years. And now he is a free agent and potentially the 49ers' next defensive coordinator. I would love to hire. My question is, so he's obviously coached under multiple schemes. He's, the classic Tampa 2 Monty Kiffin defense. He was coaching there. He coached under Dan Quinn and the cover 3 stuff they were running with the Atlanta Falcons. He kept continuity with the Los Angeles Rams and what they were running in the Brandon Staley days. And then we really know what he wanted to run when he was head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. And that was a little bit of a multiple front. And it was, we saw what they drafted last. I keep going back to the 2025 NFL draft. And the Atlanta Falcons drafted not 1, but 2 stand-up type pass rushers, 2 speed rushers. And that was Jalen Walker and who's the Tennessee kid, Pierce. And both of them were very good players, but that's what he wants on his defense, right? And so I wonder deep down what scheme he wants to run, how much of it is similar to what the 49ers are running. And one thing I really don't want, Croc, is I don't want to force a coach to run a scheme that he doesn't believe in, that he doesn't know how to coach 100%, right? If you hire Raheem Morris, I want Raheem Morris to run what Raheem Morris thinks is the best defense and the best scheme that he wants to run, and go find the personnel that fits that and not try to fit him into a box. And it's the same with Gus Bradley, and it's the same with the 49ers went after Jim Schwartz, which I think they should try to interview if they can as well.
I have a defensive coordinator, and shout out to Coach Hankins, and he has a vision for what his defense is supposed to look like. And when you let someone do their thing, how they see fit, 1, if it goes wrong, it's on them. But 2, I feel like that gives it the best chance for success. So I never understood kind of controlling something like that. Now, unless there are someone who's coming in and they are under someone for a while to be able to truly learn. Let's say D'Amico Ryan. Well, he came in with Robert Saleh in 2017. With Kyle Shanahan, Robert Saleh, D'Amico Ryan came in at that exact same time. So being under Robert Saleh for 3-4 years, that was 17, 18, 19, 20?
20, I believe.
Yeah. 21, maybe 2.
Maybe 21 as well.
Yeah. Well, he was under him the whole time. So now I'm in every single meeting. Like, this is how we do defense. I learned everything you do. Like, that works. But when you're bringing someone from the outside in and you're trying to get them up to speed in a few months to see the game the way you do, it's a little bit more difficult when putting them in a position of that much importance.
Yeah, D'Amico was defensive coordinator for the 49ers in 21 and 22. So 21 is when Robert Saleh left for the Jets job. D'Amico was DC for 2 years. So he started in 2023. So this was D'Amico's 3rd year as head coach of the Houston Texans in 2025. But yeah, they developed
that works. Like, bro, I've been here for 5 years under Robert Saleh.
And it evolved too. Like, the scheme that they brought in with Saleh kind of changed over the course of those few years, and they started running less cover 3 and more cover 4 and more other things. And D'Amico was around and in the lab with them as they were doing all of those things.
Right.
Yeah. Jim Schwartz. What do you think about the idea that Jim Schwartz is kind of a pain in the ass to work with? Do you think that would like tip things and be like, look, Jim Schwartz is maybe the best defensive coordinator you could possibly get. He's willing to come to the San Francisco 49ers. They interview him, but maybe he's abrasive. Raheem Morris is more Kyle's buddy. Does that weigh for you? Do you think it should weigh for Kyle Shanahan to be like, well, I get along with Raheem Morris better, so I'd rather have him be the defensive coordinator, or Joe Woods or Gus Bradley, because Jim Schwartz is a pain in the ass?
It is kind of tough, even if somebody's doing a good job, right? We saw that with Jay York and Jim Harbaugh, where Jim was doing a terrific job, but he just did not get along with Jay York.
We saw that with Jim Harbaugh and Jim Schwartz, too, in the middle of the field after the 49ers beat the Lions that one time.
Yeah, so I mean, that one's tough because this is a business and it's a professional setting. If I'm an NFL head coach, do I have to be buddy with the defensive coordinator, or do I just say, look, you have that side? That's one thing I noticed in the NFL too. It's kind of, the NFL is kind of two different teams. It's almost like you have an offensive team, defensive team. They're kind of separate, and there's not a whole lot of meshing. The only time they really come together is, well, there are kind of two times that they potentially can mix. One, a team meeting where everybody's there and Kyle Shanahan is addressing everyone, but again, he's still not interacting with his defensive coordinator, essentially, right? And then the other time is like special teams where, not everybody's doing special teams, but special teams guys would come together. Outside of that, you are really separate. Like you have your defensive coordinating meetings, offensive coordinating meetings. You have your position group meetings on both sides of the ball. The only time you kind of come together with some of your defensive coordinator or whatnot is maybe just game planning, making sure that they have their stuff right. But when you have a veteran like Schwartz, you kind of got to leave him alone. Like if I have Jim Schwartz as a defensive coordinator, I'm good. I believe I'm good. He's been doing this stuff for a long time. You let him do his thing.
Yeah, and you're not going to tell him what to run. You're going to hire Jim Schwartz, and he's going to run his scheme.
Yeah, he tried to do the Nick Sorensen type stuff, but
yeah,
it didn't work too well.
No, can't do that. And you don't want to hire someone who's going to go get a head coach job next year, and you have to find another defense coordinator again. Do you think that tiebreaker Morris or Schwartz? Do you think one is more likely than the other to have a head coach opportunity very soon? Because they both got head coach interviews. Neither one got head coach jobs.
Ooh.
I think Morris is younger. He's still more likely if Niners had Austin.
More likely, but I doubt it.
Yeah. Or at least
I think Schwartz maybe. I think if he goes to the 49ers and just crushes it, I think Schwartz is more likely. Like if they both came and had the same type of success in the season, I feel like Schwartz is more likely to get a head coaching job. Really? It's kind of been a while for him.
It has been a while for him. He's older though, 60. Nobody wants to hire an old defensive coach. You want to hire the young hotshot coordinator. And if it's a defensive coach, it's at least a young defensive coach. I get that.
Well,
to be honest with you, I don't think either one is going to get a head coach job in the next couple of years. But it's still possible. It's still possible. But that might be the tiebreaker. Look, it's good. I think Raheem Morris. The more I talk through it, the more I think it's very likely Raheem Morris is the guy. Because Kyle Shanahan always on who he knows.
John Harbaugh turned 64 this year. I mean, and they didn't hesitate to hire him.
Yeah,
so I think if they feel like you're a good coach.
I mean, he's had so much success as a head coach already. Like you knew he was going to immediately get swooped up and be a head coach.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't compare the two. Schwartz was also a head coach for the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, true. It's a rough place to win. It's almost as bad as trying to win with the Browns, which is where he has been. And they had an awesome defense.
There's certain places where I feel like I know you just want the opportunity and they probably pay you a lot of money. But am I setting myself up for success going here? As a coordinator, that is different, though. Cleveland Browns defensive coordinator, and I'm looking to get a potential job as a head coach. I can go to the Browns and say, all right, well, I got Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward. And at that time, they had a Greg Newsome.
Mm-hmm.
They traded him for Campbell, but they've had a stellar group on defense. But then it's like, man, our defense, we have to work so hard because that damn offense is crappy every year.
Well, by the way, it went from Joe Woods to Jim Schwartz, defensive coordinator of the Browns, did it not? We just went through those timelines.
Yep.
And they already had Myles Garrett, but it got a lot better under Jim Schwartz. It's going to be Raheem Morris, right? He's got the ties. He's got, he coached with Kyle in Tampa, coached with him in Washington, coached with him in Atlanta. They've known each other for years. He's a good coach. I think it's Raheem Morris. You got to interview Jim Schwartz if you can, though, in my opinion. Let's talk injuries. I don't want to talk a lot about the substations, but I have a take on that. Let's get into it. And we got a question from one of our listeners as well about it all. This episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Indeed. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is to find the fit. You want candidates who truly match what you're looking for. Trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring? Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. Instead of struggling to get your job post seen, Indeed sponsored job helps your listing stand out and reach quality candidates faster. It's important to reach them faster because you want to spend less time interviewing and more time hiring and finding those candidates who check all the boxes. And according to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. So spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Croc. Let's talk injuries. What's to blame? What's going on with all these injuries? Do you want to read the question, or do you want me to read the question from one of our listeners? It's kind of a long one.
Go ahead, you can read it.
Okay. He said, "Yo, what's up? Listener from Germany." Shout out to all our listeners from around the world. He said, "If I'm not mistaken, you talked this summer about Kyle's training philosophy and mentioned he could do more conditioning training. There is a video of Kyle explaining how he'll approach training in the offseason in the film room. And Greenlaw brought up some stuff about the difference of how Kyle and Sean Payton approach training overall. Can you please discuss on the podcast how important your structure of the training is as a coach? I would like to hear your opinion on this from two very different approaches and how you'd like to approach training in terms of injury prevention." And he goes on to say some of the stuff, and appreciate a longtime listener there from Germany. Injury prevention is something that I am not qualified to speak on. What I do know, Croc, is that the 49ers are an outlier in injury-wise and have led the league in injuries like 9 of 10 years. So there's something there, right? And really in the Kyle Shanahan era. As far as the substation stuff goes, I mean, that one report from the one guy is just like, it's so easy to poke so many holes in it, and I didn't even want to give it a lot of airtime. Maybe there's a little something to it, but he doesn't point to any hard evidence of any of the frequency substation stuff that is really just rock solid. And then there was another doctor, I saw a video recently that debunked a lot of it. And to be honest with you, if that's the case, here's the thing. So perception becomes reality with a lot of this stuff. I think the 49ers probably have to address it. But here's the thing. The 49ers have been getting injured quite a bit. And they've been at the top of the league. If the 49ers are getting injured more often than other teams, and it's not the substation, then it has something to do with practicing and training, right? And so if the 49ers say it's not the substation, then it's like, well, okay, then it's the training staff, right? It's somebody else in the building. So that has to be the thing that changes, right? But whatever it is, the 49ers have to address it and you have to try to do something differently to not be as hurt as often as the 49ers are.
Yeah, process over results. And in this case, I think the process and the results are pretty flawed when it comes to the 49ers and the injuries. Whew. I don't know where to start with it. I say this. It doesn't have much to do with Kyle Shanahan. I think Kyle's doing everything he can to try to field a competitive team, get working, while still trying to figure out different ways to take care of guys' bodies. We've seen a lot of veteran rest days for Trent Williams and Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle, and all these guys are sitting out at one time or another, whether it's during the season or during training camp. So he is trying to preserve guys' body most of the time. And you guys have seen this when Kyle Shanahan stands on the podium and you start asking him about injuries and when a guy will return. He doesn't know. He gets information. Well, excuse me. He's not the guy that's diagnosing the players. He gets the information from the team doctors and trainers. And then he just spits out whatever they essentially say. So even when it comes to the structure of practice, they're probably telling him, hey, I've been to coaching clinics. I went to San Jose State Coaches Clinic last year. And they have the guys wear those things that look like a bra. And they are monitoring every single step that the players are taking during practice. And they have this whole thing where they don't want them to get over a certain amount of steps. They kind of want it to be in between here and here. And they are truly tracking it per position. And they have some analytical data based on how this guy is going to perform more and then how many steps they need to be able to do a certain thing in the game. Like, it's really wild. The head coach, I promise you, has nothing to do with any of that. Like, that is the trainers and the analytics. So Kyle Shanahan structures his practice a certain way, probably understands, hey, let's keep it around, this many reps, and he understands that part. But with these injuries, it's other people. It's definitely not Kyle. And they have to figure that part out. Now, I did see in the chat that somebody said Greenlaw and Bourne have talked about how difficult 49ers practices are. But maybe I read it wrong. I thought Greenlaw said that Broncos practices are even more difficult.
Yeah, he says after leaving SF, practices got tougher. Yeah, so Greenlaw said that it was more strenuous in Denver, and he had to get used to it versus with the 49ers. And it's good.
Maybe that's what you need, right? A more strenuous practice. I don't know, but they have to figure something out because the fact that the 49ers continue to lead the NFL in injuries, I'm a guy that likes to say, oh, you play football, you're going to get hurt. But at some point, like, why is it happening so much more consistently to the 49ers than any other team in the NFL? That part is very wild.
It is wild. And the 49ers need to figure it out and get to the bottom of it. As pointed out in the chat, the 49ers did change training staffs because we had similar conversations about the 49ers were injured too much, and they changed staffs in 2019. And then it's been the same head trainer since 2019 for the 49ers. Maybe it is electromagnetic fields. Maybe it is the substation. I don't know. But the 49ers need to do a study on it. They need to do whatever they can to either debunk it or figure out something else because clearly they are hurt too often. And getting older as a football team doesn't help either. All right. That'll do it for today's program. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, making us your first listen. Thanks to everybody jumping in the live chat and hanging out with us. We've got a lot more conversations to come about the 49ers offseason. Who knows? Maybe when we reconvene, there will be a new defensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers. And, of course, Croc and I will have it all covered for you. Start breaking down more prospects, talking draft, talking free agency. Senior Bowl this weekend. There's the Super Bowl. Then it's the Combine. And then free agency opens. It never stops in the NFL. That's why we do it every single day through the offseason as well. So tune in and subscribe. Croc and I back after the weekend right here. Locked On 49ers.